This is a 4-part video series. Make sure that you watch all 4 parts. Hello once again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher, and this is tip 708, which is part 3 of my series on this little South Bend grinding jig that will allow you to very accurately sharpen and grind your high-speed steel tool bits. So in parts 1 and 2, I made the block, that was part 1, and in part 2 I made some of the sleeves. And remember, I talked about buying these square hole sleeves, which will make the job much easier if anyone actually makes this. But if you want these, you can get them from this outfit here on my shirt. I did not get these free, I had to pay for them. I'm not sponsored by them, although I did get a free t-shirt. So, alright, let's get on with engraving the sleeves. Now what I'm going to show you in this video is how to make the graduations on these sleeves. And since there are 4 of these, you would have to do that engraving 4 times, and it is rather tedious and time consuming. And I did a practice run on it, and I hope I'm successful in this video. But what we've done here, or what South Bend originally did, is, of course, there's 360 degrees in a circle, but the diameter of this is too small to make all 360 graduations on there. They would run together. So what they did is to make a graduation at 5 degrees, so 5, 10, 15, and up to 90, and 180, 270, and then back to 0. So what I'm going to do is just copy pretty much what they did. So the first graduation here will be rather long, and then there's 2 short ones, then a long one, 2 short ones, and so on all the way around. And we're going to do that on the Bridgeport mill simply by scribing this or engraving it with the sharp tool of your own design or my own design. And I'm going to use the spin index to divide the circle or to index it. You can use whatever you have, dividing head, index head, maybe even a rotary table. But you might find this interesting. I do not think I will stamp all the numbers. There's really very little room to do that, as you can see. And this is the one that I made in part 2. Remember, I changed the design and I got away from the V notch and made it a flat notch. And then I already made myself some dog point set screws, which you can buy or make yourself, that'll fit in there. And the reason I changed that design is that South Bend had not accurately located the this little set screw hole with the center of this V-groove. So the way I did it, I think, makes it simpler to make and more foolproof than what they did. It's also difficult to make a V-groove like this without a lot of chatter. You can see the evidence here by how the set screw damaged one side of it because it did not center, so it was pushing against. That's what those marks are, if anyone would care. Okay, I'm over at the Bridgeport mill, and this is where I will do the engraving or scribing, whatever you want to call it. Now this is the 5C spin index. It holds 5C collets. I do not know if I have ever used it in a video, but it's a little indexing vise. They are rather inexpensive if you need to pick one up, and I'm going to show you how to use it. But first of all, we got to talk about how I'm going to hold the work. So this is a 15/16 5C collet holding the sleeve. I still got that a little bit too tight. So there are several things that I have to do now in order to scribe this, to make this setup. So let's get started, and I'll show you what step 1 is. Well, the very first thing I want to do is to center the work. So I've already off camera used an edge finder up against this surface here and found the exact true center so that I'm scribing on center. and I have locked the milling machine table, and I've set the digital readout for 0 there so I do not lose my place. This is my engraving tool. Now I have no idea what the original purpose was for this or where I've actually got this, because I've had it forever. But it's like a half center here. It's not really a cutting tool, but it's just sharp and it's hard, and I'm going to engrave and scribe with it. So you won't have one of these. I don't know where you would get one. So you might have to make up a tool like a threading tool, only with round stock that you can hold in an R8 collet, and that would work fine. I have done that method before on the Atlas lathe, scribing or engraving graduated collars. You may have seen that video. Okay, the engraving tool is tightened, and I've already oriented it, and by that I mean I want it locked such that the flat edge is perpendicular to the table. In other words, like that, and then I have locked it so it won't rotate on me. Remember that the machine will not be turned on for this. This is strictly a scratching or engraving type of operation, no power involved. Now I need a little room in here, perhaps a ½ inch, so that the tool does not strike the collet and that there is no interference up above it between the spindle or the quill and this plate. If you are not familiar with the spin index, they're quite inexpensive and pretty accurate. This crank here is what allows a person to tighten up that 5C collet, but when we're unlocked here, it also allows you to turn the whole device. Let me explain these numbers. Okay, the plate has numbers on it up to 360 degrees. And there's a pin here that will fit into holes, but it will only fit into a hole every 10 degrees. So I'm going to be scribing every 5 degrees, so I will move it and just read 5 right there. This is a bit of a vernier device here, don't pay any attention to that, but I will lock the brass knob, and then I would be ready to make my first engraving. And after that's done, I could loosen this up and bring it to the 10 degree mark and put the pin in place and tighten it. And then for 15, like that, and tighten it, and so on, all the way around for 360 monotonous degrees. Okay, the collet isn't tightened yet, but I want to orient the work so that it is squared up. So I'm going to put a 5/16 bit in there like that, and then how will I determine exactly such that it is level? I do not like the word level. I do not like to use a level, but there's my little sterret level. Now that would work and would be close enough if the table on my machine was truly level, but it's not. And yours probably isn't either. So I'm going to use an alternate method, and I do not have much regard for using levels for setups. So I took a small pinch clamp and clamped a piece of high-speed steel, but it doesn't have to be that. A ruler would do, a short rule. And then using my Miller's Falls surface gauge, I'm just checking to see that the height right there is the same as the height here, which it isn't right now, but I can move it one way or the other and just by guess and bagosh get it pretty darn, if not perfect. And at that point I will tighten the 5C collet in the spin index, and I'll do that off camera. And there I have it set as accurately as is humanly possible. And I can take this off. Okay, concerning what I showed you just a few moments ago on turning the workpiece into compliance, forget about the two insane methods that I told you about, using a level or a surface gauge. Here is a far better method that I just came up with. Take your favorite drill press vise. Now this one isn't quite high enough, so I'm going to take two parallels and raise the vise by just, well, about 3/8 of an inch, like that. And then, opening the vise just enough, you can rotate the work and then bring the vise into position and tighten it, and it will rotate the work because I've got a tool bit in this sleeve, and now I can tighten up the collet, remove the vise, and I can be assured that the tool bit, that is the top of the tool bit, is parallel with the machine. Now in review here, these graduations are 5 degrees apart. So we go from 0, 5, 10, and 15 degrees is the longer mark. So some graduations are short and some are long. The short graduations are 75 thousandths and the long ones are 140 thousandths. Write that down. Do not count on your memory for that, because you do not want to spoil the work and have to start over. I would like the engravings to be 10 thousandths deep, so I'm going to put a piece of paper in here and I'm going to lower the quill until it's caught. As you can see there, I'm locking the quill, I'm backing it off, and I'm going to raise the table exactly 10 thousandths. So 10 thousandths is the depth of the engraving. And next I'm going to bring the engraving tool up to the edge of the work, as you see right there, and now I'm going to zero out my digital readout. You will not be able to see that, but I'm pushing the 0, and again, those are my dimensions when I start engraving. So my first scribe will be on 0. Notice the little arrowhead there is on 0, and then for the next one, let me run a sample here. I will loosen this up. This is a bit of a repetition, but it'll be on 5 degrees. I will scribe, bring it on 10, and I always use the pin for the even ones, and so on. And here I go with the first graduation. It'll be 140 thousandths. And there's the first one. Keep watching as I index the work. And this one will be 75 thousandths. And another one 75 thousandths. And now 140. Notice that there is a little bit of a burr on it, which I will remove later on. Now watch this. And I will do that all the way around. I'll meet you when I have about just 2 or 3 graduations left. This will take about a half hour. It's about 30 minutes later and I have 3 or 4 graduations left. Pray for me that it comes out even. And this is the last one. Well, that's it, and I think that it came out even. It's looking good. I'm going to take it out. Okay, there it is, and it's looking good. Now there's quite a bit of burrs on there. So I'll put this in the lathe and strike it with a file a couple times and that'll all clean up. Now this is the 5/16 square, so I have another one to do in 1/4 inch, but I will do that, of course, off camera. Now I just put a center line on the block, and at the very end I want to deepen that a little bit and put a 0 on it like this. Okay, I just took the 3/32 number stamps and stamped that a 0. Now I have no intentions of stamping the other numbers on there like on the originals. It's always difficult to stamp numbers or letters on a round surface. Now I'm going to drill and tap this 1/4 hole in this block. Now you might remember that the distance from the shoulder there to the center of this groove is 1 inch. So with the height gauge set for 1 inch, now I will center punch and then drill 13/64 and tap 1/4 and that is the set screw, the dog point set screw that will hold the sleeve in place. Okay, I've drilled and tapped the hole in there, and if you were able to see this, which I don't think you will on the video, looking down that bore, the hole is perfectly in alignment with this groove and with the dog point set screw, which is again way too long. I need to find a shorter one that will allow me to lock this into any position. That could be a thumb screw on there also, if it would help you and make it easier. Now every one of the sleeves has a set screw in it, 1/4, and they are exactly 1.5 inches from the shoulder. So I've already laid out here 1.5 inches from the shoulder and on the center line, and I have punched it already. So what I'm going to do now is drill both holes at the same time so they line up. So I'll go 13/64 all the way through, and then I will all the way through this even and tap it 1/4 20, and then I will go back and open up this hole because it's a clearance hole, so that looks like it's about 3/8, but I will measure it, and I'll do really all of that off of camera. But one thing that needs to be noted here is that when I drill that hole, the sleeve again has to be oriented so that the flat spot or the flat side is parallel with this side. In other words, I don't want to drill the hole at an angle like that. Okay, so this hole is drilled 13/64. Now when I put the sleeve in there, and I'm going to drill both sleeves before I open up this hole, and you'll see why. But the idea now again is to orient this kind of like what I did over in the milling machine when we did the engraving. I think I ought to show you this because I was thinking here, how am I going to do this to get the orientation here? So I'm already set up in a vise, ready to drill that, but I'm going to use a second vise of similar size. And when I tighten that onto that bit, that will force it into alignment. And also I want to make sure that this doesn't work its way out a little bit as I drill. So I ought to put a clamp on there or hold it pretty tight, because as you start to drill, sometimes it can kick the work out. Does that ever happen to you? Alright, that holds it in alignment, and the orange clamp keeps it from moving out, and I'm ready to drill. But do you see anything wrong with what I'm doing? Well, what I'm doing wrong, well, it's not really wrong, but if I drill, I will hit the 5/16 square tool bit, and I can't go any farther after that, and I will dull the bit. So what I'm going to do is just come in there and drill it and spot it and get it started, and then I can take all of this other nonsense off and it's not going to move. Okay, that worked perfectly. Got a burr on there, of course. So I will tap that, and again, that is the set screw that will hold the bit firmly into the sleeve. And even though this one isn't engraved, I'm going to go ahead and get it drilled and tapped as well. And then I will open up this hole to this size, and that's my clearance size. You know what? I'm almost done. So I've got the 2 holes drilled and tapped in the sleeves, 1/4 and I enlarged this clearance hole. Not as big as that, I don't know why that one's so big. But of course the purpose of these are to hold the tool bit in the sleeve, and if you wanted to leave the sleeve in the block, you still have access to it through this clearance hole. Well, I'm about done here. Let me know if you make one of these, and if you do make one, suggestions for doing it better or alternative ways. There's so many ways of doing things. Now I got some cleanup work to do on this, and of course I have to go over and put the graduations on the 1/4 inch. As mentioned before, I do not intend to do the 3/16 or the 3/8. Those are sizes I don't use very often. Plus, I have the original one, so I don't have to worry so much about this. Notice that this sleeve was held in with Loctite. You can still see a little bit of the red there I need to clean up. Very disappointed with the finish I got here. I got a great finish till I got to the final cuts. Final cleanup passes were terrible. The rough cutting, the deep cutting, I had a beautiful finish. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's all hidden anyway, isn't it? Well, that concludes part 3 of this 4-part series. Be sure and watch part 5 when available, because that is the video where I'm going to show you how to actually use this to grind your bits. Be sure and leave me a thumbs up and subscribe and all that good stuff, because my channel has been floundering. I think it would help a lot if people would do that, so I would appreciate that. And watch my many other videos, and I'll see you in part 4. Thanks for watching.